Hey, everybody, welcome to today's Total Health Live. If it's Friday at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, it's Total Health Live. I'm going to help you survive. I'm Dr.
It
Christopher
is.
Vogelmann. What?
It is.
Okay. So we're talking pandemic pounds, COVID, all good things to help you get the news and views that you can use to stay healthy in these rather changeable times. With me, as always, is the inimitable, notable nutritionist, Monika Klein, north of me.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. First Friday of August, 2021. I'm a little interested. It's kind of interesting that they're calling the Olympics, Tokyo 2020, because it feels like, we're still not finished with 2020. But 2021 has its own problems, inherent
Well,
problems.
Olympics are in even years, so it's always, I think they just don't, it's all about the branding.
Well, yeah,
you don't want to have to change
branding, they probably have spent a fortune on that branding and all sorts of things, and everything's contractual. And I know the reason, but it's still kind of interesting. Like you have to stop some. Okay, 2020. It's odd, but it is what it is. Everything's odd the last 2 years. Yes.
All right, yes, indeed. And those of you who are watching live, thank you for tuning in live today. And those of you who are watching on the replay, which is the majority of you, please use the hashtag replay so we can find you and answer any additional questions or suggestions that you have for future broadcasts. So as always, we're going to talk a little bit about what's currently going on in our, well, I won't say our favorite topic, but our top of the mind topic, which is pandemics and viruses and masks and vaccines and all that crazy stuff that goes on right now.
COVID.
And then we're going to move on into, whoa, just dropped something. We're going to move on into Q&A for those of our viewers. I was going to say readers, because you can tell I grew up in the age of newspapers. And then we'll get into that. So anyway, let's take a peek at some of the stuff that we've got going today. You and I were both listening to Dr. John Campbell from time to time. And you were talking about something you had suggested talking about Delta for the vax versus the non-vaxxed. And by the way, I'm not a big vaccine person by any stretch of the imagination. I got my first vaccine this year of my entire life. So, and it was mainly because we saw a lot of people in the family, my wife's side of the family and elsewhere, get very sick, and several people die. And so that was my realization that as much as I believe in natural health and boosting your immune system and eating clean and all the good things in diet and organic food and everything else, and chiropractic adjustments and acupuncture and energy work and all the other stuff, I still felt that it was a prudent thing to do. And that was after a lot of research. So
yeah. No, I agree. I mean, it's hard to know, and, pro-vax, no-vax, it's not really a matter of that. It's a matter of what's best.
Well, it's staying safe and doing your part. I put a couple of slides together that as reminders from last week, but why don't we'll go out, talk about some things like because you had mentioned vaxxed versus non-vaxxed, and what are your opinions or views on that?
So, I mean, with the Delta rampaging around, they have been seeing some indication that there's not a lot of difference between those vaxxed and unvaxxed. And, I had two people that work here, and they both, I said, you need to get tested before you come back. One just had a really bad cold, and, some of the symptoms are sort of just really bad cold kinds of symptoms. So I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm trying to adjust my light so I don't look so hot, and I should have done it before.
You look fine.
I don't mind looking hot, but
yeah. You're looking hot? Is that what
it's hot when it's on the face and it's too much light. Anyway, that's the terminology. But anyway, we said, she has to get a test before she comes back, and certainly she did. And of course she tested negative, and another person who's been gone, who I think had the Delta, and will probably have to get maybe if he wants to get an antibody test to see if he actually had it, but both of them were vaccinated. So
Yeah, I mean, but to say, yeah, you mentioned something. I think that I don't think you intended to say that there's no difference between the vaxxed and the unvaxxed, because I think
Well,
you're looking at severity of symptoms and things like that. I mean, hospitalizations and deaths
but we're
are
talking
not
about
often associated with those who are
cases. We're
vaccinated.
talking about cases, and this is the thing.
Cases,
It's
okay.
such an alarm. Oh,
Right.
cases have gone up. Yeah, because the vaccine wasn't intended to get rid of. Well, actually, that was our hope, to get rid of the disease for
That's
good.
your
To
that's your
wipe it out.
cases. Yeah, that's your cases thing that you just talked about right now about the
Yeah, so the
number of
cases are
cases
up
are up.
definitely. To give you an update, the cases are up in the U.S., down in the U.K. because they experimented with this opening up, and cases are down there. Canada's down. Mexico's going up. In fact, it's on their red list. And a lot of what we get, I mean, I kind of research everyone, but I do like John Campbell's research because he does a lot of the research for us in advance. So Mexico is now on the red list, and they're requiring quarantine and 2,000 pounds for a 2-week quarantine. I know in Canada it was 2,000 for.
Does it look anything like this?
Yep, that's it. That's it.
Those are those expats or people just traveling in Mexico? The
I
6,000.
guess anyone who's coming into the UK from Mexico, and it could be. I mean, I guess it could also be people who just went and took a vacation into Mexico.
Yeah.
Anybody.
So my understanding was simply that those who are not back by this Sunday have to do the hotel quarantining, and
Yeah.
it's more than the 2,000 pounds, which is equivalent right now to close to $2,800 dollars US. And we'll get to this in just a bit here.
Yeah. So and then again, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam have gone up as well. Argentina down. These are just sort of like a hand. Sort of like an idea of what's going on around the world. I think South Africa is up again, and Australia is definitely up again. Well, it's up again in certain pockets that we've talked about all along, and they just lock down right away. Even if there's 5 cases, they just go into extreme lockdown right away because that's what they do. Deaths in the U.S. 33.9% increase. That's significant. Vaccination is now 50% in the U.S. An interesting thing in New Orleans, they're finding 1 out of 5 admissions into the hospital with COVID, they're under 17. So they're seeing a lot of sick children these days, which is very unfortunate.
I think that's the thing that's most disconcerting at the present time, is that the kids seem to be picking up the Delta pretty easily now that there's a large portion of the adult population in the U.S. Vaccinated.
Yeah.
And so, and in terms of kids, I mean, it was interesting. Do I have something on that? I do, but we always talk about prevention too. And I would say that, it is important to recognize that, we're not just talking about vaccine, but, you have mentioned numerous times, Monika, about increasing your vitamin D intake and vitamin C and all the good things to keep your immune system up. And I would say that, when we look at it, just a simple thing about eating, plenty of your fresh fruits, veggies, and other things like that is a good thing, is a good immune booster. So
yeah, so we know kids aren't into that kind of thing.
No, it's usually McNuggets or nuggets and fries is what I found.
It's interesting because kids have been in the house a lot more. They're not outside playing. I mean, I think it's changed just certainly in the last 6 to 8 months, but cumulatively, I don't know if it is cumulative, so maybe they're lacking some of the vitamin D, but that's not a normal marker that you take for kids. I mean, you don't really do a lot of blood work in case you're only if your child is not feeling well. That's when you start doing the blood work. So you can't really tell what's going on with them. If it's just low immune system, if it's just their low immune system, or if in fact this is just so virulent that they're just susceptible to contracting it.
I think that the variant tends to be, because it's so more highly transmissible, it seems to be affecting people more quickly. And the general thought is amongst immunologists that, when your body is presented with something new and different that it's never seen before, that's why you start getting all kinds of bizarre, severe symptoms, because it's just something that is extremely foreign to human beings.
But are they bizarre? I mean, they're just normal symptoms like a headache and a.
No, I'm saying your immune response, your T cells, your killer T cells and your B cells, they've never seen it before.
The response is bizarre.
Yeah. The response is off because if there have been multiple COVID-19 infections, this particular SARS-2, if this had been going on for say 5-10 years or more, you would see probably what would be regarded as a typical response to it, just as you would to a cold virus. So.
But we did have, now I completely forget what the other SARS was, but what was it called? But that was early 2000s, I think. That was
SARS. That was SARS, and it was regarded now as type 1, whereas this is SARS type 2 because it's a sudden acute respiratory syndrome virus.
Right. Yeah, and yet people are getting all sorts of, not non-respiratory.
Yeah, in fact, we now are realizing more and more that really COVID-19 is an inflammatory condition. It doesn't just inflame your lungs, but your whole blood circulatory system, and in particular the heart, which is why we've been seeing a lot of this stuff going on with youngsters and,
myocarditis,
myocarditis, which I had right over here. Whoops, sorry, I didn't put that there. I got to go back over. There we go. But it's a small percentage with myocarditis.
Is basically an inflammation of the muscle of the heart. Just so you know.
Yeah. So it's just myo is muscle. Cardio refers to heart, and it's inflammation of the heart muscle. But it's a small percentage of people, more male. It tends to be younger, more male.
More young males, yes.
More young males, but the general regard that the symptoms are relatively mild and people recover fairly quickly. So I think that's the most important thing. Yeah, there is a possibility of getting problems, but if it's relatively transient and not a permanent thing, that's another story. Of course, we really don't know because there's a lot of folks who have long COVID symptomatology. And that's something that you look at that, maybe it takes, there are cases I know in hospitals where people have lost their hair to a great extent. And once they've left the hospital, it's about a 6-month time period until they start growing their hair back.
So they lost it completely. This is interesting.
Either completely or greatly thinning or coming out.
This is what's happening with my husband, greatly thinning, and I'm not sure what that's from. It may
he could have had a COVID infection. You just didn't know it, and his response might have been relatively mild, and then got the vaccine. So it's possible because. I mean, it's just like, the whole COVID infection rates in the United States. I do remember that the people were telling me like, oh my God, no, it was here a lot longer than we thought it was.
Yeah. And you think someone as ill as he would be really, it would be noticeable if he contracted even a mild case. Because
there's such variability. And I think it's really interesting.
It really is interesting. But I think there's interrelated reasons why this might be happening, but to him, but I'd never heard that about the thinning of the hair until just now. So that's
the thinning of the hair is really a thing. But that's why we're still recommending to people, that you stick with masks at this point, and the social distancing has changed a bit. People, we talk about vaccines, and I remember some of the things that I've heard. In particular, it was really interesting. I think it's a TikTok video, or it's being circulated now on Twitter, and I think also on Instagram Reels, and it is hilarious. I don't know if this is an ER doctor or if this is an ER nurse or someone, but he is just brilliant at talking about things relative to the vaccines and how people just don't want to do anything. And they talk about the microchip thing that's designed to track you. And his point is very well taken. I've mentioned this long before, which is your smartphone already tracks you. You're very easy to track at this point, unless you don't have your phone with you. The notion that vaccines will give you COVID-19 and because of the mRNA and the attenuated virus and stuff, they're not giving you an active virus, for God's sakes. And the horrible side effects, there are side effects for different people.
Yeah,
I mean, but most side effects are mild. And no vaccine is 100%. It's just like, if you take birth control and you have intercourse, there's no birth control that's 100% in preventing a baby for a pregnancy. If you wear seatbelts when you drive, the use of seatbelts will not 100% protect you from a car accident, from injuries in a car accident.
I talk about, the VERS site, the vaccine adverse event site. I talk about that often. And one thing that dawned on me after last broadcast, and I realized that, we talk about the pharmaceutical companies and how, their list of all these side effects with all the drugs. They're always listed, and it's scary, but it's laughable because it's just so bizarre. This like stream of side effects. Yet with the vaccine, none of the side effects are indicated or mentioned. If you have this vaccine, you may have this and this and this and this and this. Why is that not happening? Because you can make an educated. Well, actually, maybe it's because we want to take the decision out of the people's
No,
hands.
it's just because you think about it, that who is advertising? Pfizer's not on TV advertising right now. Neither is Moderna, nor is J&J.
They will get fully approved apparently at the end of August, they're thinking, which will increase mandatory vaccination programs.
Well, you might want to be a little clear about mandatory. I think there's certain employers who may mandate things. There are certain federal, of course, federal buildings and other things like that where it's mandatory. But I mean, to say that the entire country is going to be mandated to get the vaccine, I don't know that's correct.
That's what they're saying. Who
are they? That's what I want to know.
Well, this is the research, and again, I got it directly just before we came on air from John Campbell's research. And so that is one of the additive bonuses that Pfizer gets from full FDA approval is that increased mandatory need for vaccine will probably happen because of that approval, because you can no longer say it's emergency and it's not fully approved, so could be you could be at risk. And now when it's approved, when it gets approved, it's going to be, there's no excuse. You have to. So the
question is, under what circumstances and by whom?
Well, I mean, it could definitely be a governmental mandate. I'm sure it would come from the government more than industry at this point, and that's probably where it would come from. So so that is, a very, very good possibility that will be the case once approval happens. Pfizer is the first in line to get approved, and they're looking probably at the end of the month. Moderna a little bit later, maybe 2 or 3 months, we don't know, but that is definitely some news, hot news.
As opposed to hot lighting.
So if that gets approved, will they, and in fact, that was my initial question here, will they start bringing in the side effects, or will they just not bring any side effects into the messaging, because that would make people very nervous, and then they wouldn't get the vaccine, and then choice, like what's happening if you don't put side effects in there, you don't really have an educated choice. You really don't have a choice certainly when it's mandated, you don't have a choice. So I don't know if that was quite circuitous in my explanation but what I'm trying to say is that most medications, most drugs have all the side effects listed, and yet not everyone is taking that particular drug that's advertised. So when you see that ad, you go, oh, well, I have, diabetes. I have this vasculitis. I have this whatever. I have this irritable bowel. I'm going to go ask my doctor to prescribe that for me. But if I'm going to ask him, or I'm not going to ask him, because maybe I don't want that drug. But if you have no, I guess what I'm really trying to say is that most medications have side effects, whereas the vaccine has no side effects listed. That's why people are, sort of negating any kind of adverse reactions. And that's all I have to say about that.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, well, I worked in the pharmaceutical industry, and I also have a lot of. I'm fairly familiar with most of the medical legal requirements within practice, as well as within the labeling. And I can tell you that, for example, the bottle of aspirin that you would have on a shelf as an OTC or over-the-counter product does not list all the potential side effects of the aspirin, and yet people take it somewhat readily. If aspirin were today to be presented to the FDA for approval, aspirin would not make the cut and would not be approved as a drug
but it's
because
OTC.
of the side effects.
It's not prescribed.
It doesn't matter. The reality is it would be first presented to the FDA as a prescription drug. Aspirin. It has never been used before. We're going to go into this little fantasy world, which is aspirin is a brand new drug that's been introduced to the public in the 21st century. And it would have to go through numerous trials and other things. The FDA, because of all the adverse side effects of aspirin, and the same thing's true of ibuprofen, would probably not approve those drugs.
Yeah, and that's my point. My point is that even if it did have to go through the approval process, it would have all the side effects listed, right?
No, it does not. It does not.
It would.
But over-the-counter products that are now listed do not have that. And I can tell you,
vaccines aren't over the counter.
I understand that, but if you,
counterpoint.
If you, Dr. Monika, were to take the insert out of the package of the COVID-19 vaccine, whether J&J, Pfizer, or Moderna,
which you never get,
you would have to. Well, I mean, would you, as a consumer, average Joe or Jane consumer, understand reading one of those inserts? Because having been educated as a doctor and a pharmaceutical sales rep, I don't understand everything in those inserts.
But the point is, it's there and it's accessible. And any medication you get, you have like pages and pages of side effects and adverse. You get that, but you don't get that.
I think you must be in an ideal world where everybody gives you that, because I can tell you for a fact, coming through pharmacies here in the U.S., you do not always get the insert for the package. So.
Well.
I mean, and if you do, you have an extraordinary pharmacy. You have an extraordinary pharmacy with an exceptional pharmacist.
We do. I remember shredding a lot of those. There's pages and pages. Certainly, CBS did it, and maybe still does it. I don't know. But the point is not even printed things. I'm talking about advertising. I mean, we talked about several times. Watching these ads on TV, watching or listening to them on the radio, you hear all the side effects. You hear the actual oral dissertation about all these side effects.
But interestingly enough, you don't hear all the side effects.
No,
and the reason I say that is because the commercial, they can't buy enough airtime or afford enough airtime to list all the potential side effects in a commercial.
We hear some, but we don't hear any for the vaccine, though. We don't hear any for the vaccine.
Well, I hear it regularly, and I guess it just depends on what news sources you tune into, who you listen to, and whether people are paying attention or not. So.
You hear the side effects they don't have any commercials for the vaccine. Well, they do, kind of like more public service kind of announcements. But the point is, I want fairness here, equal. But I think that
I would like to have all the side effects of alcohol listed on the side of a bottle, but that's not going to happen. So.
But my point is, we're talking about equal here. We're talking about most drugs would have that. And I think the reason they don't have it on the vaccine is I think it would concern the population more. And they
So with respect to flu vaccines or the chicken pox or all the other vaccinations, do you think that every person gets the listing of all the potential side effects for every vaccine that's delivered in the United States?
I think you're missing my point. Counterpoint. The point is, it's not even one side effect listed, whereas all medication have many side effects listed, and it's not whether you get it or not. It's like fair advertising. Okay, it's fair advertising. It should be equal for any kind of medication. If you're going to give side effects for beer, you'll give side effects for all the alcohol that's advertised, not just for beer.
Which, by the way, beer consumption has actually gone down across the world.
Has it?
Spirits and wine have gone up.
Yeah, I guess people want to get drunker faster or something.
Apparently those people who were moderate to mild drinkers drank less during lockdown, and those who were heavier drinkers actually drank more.
Interesting.
And I can tell you that is my personal experience, because I drank far less during lockdown. So yeah. I'm an N of one, but it's an interesting observation, I think. And part of it too was that, for example, some of the lighter things like beers and ciders and all the other lighter drinks, they were typically, I think, served in bars, and people would go out and have a beer or have a hard cider or whatever it was.
It's a more of a social thing, I think.
Very social.
Grab a beer.
As opposed to getting stinking drunk. So that's the thing.
In your privacy of your home, right?
Well, yeah, because you can be a closet drinker at home.
So let's leave that alone right now. And I don't know if we've resolved, but I think I made my point. But so what I'm thinking about is the ivermectin, the antivirals, and there's not a lot of attention on those being used prophylactically, and there has been some good research showing that it does help. I mean, it's an antiparasitic medication, and specifically for worms, but it does have some prophylactic benefit. This is something that is still not being discussed very, very, very much in the mainstream media, but it is something to consider, something to look at, and something to investigate.
If you're looking for certain antivirals like resveramir and some of the other ones, the problem is cost. So thousands and thousands of dollars per antiviral dose is something that probably the U.S. healthcare system or insurance companies are simply not going to pay for, and hence the emphasis upon vaccines, social distancing.
Ivermectin isn't that expensive, actually.
I was talking about the antivirals.
Yeah,
that's an
this is an antiviral. Ivermectin's an antiviral, but it's not that expensive. So
how often do you buy it?
I researched it last weekend, but it's not as expensive as the remdesivir.
Yeah, remdesivir is the one that the former president got, and I can't remember, it was $3,000 a dose or something. It was amazingly high.
Yeah. So
it's kind of like somebody getting on Humira, which is thousands, tens of thousands of dollars per month supply. So let me see. What was the other thing I wanted to make mention here? Oh yeah, this is my cute little slide for those of you who really are into this. It's your patriotic duty to take care of yourself.
For others, duty to care for others.
Care for others, which it's your duty to care for others and save a bunch of money by not going to the ER. So I think that's an important thing. Hey, I'm going to save this for the end.
Oh, wow, this is great.
That's our cocktail information. I was going to say it's our contact information. Cocktails. We'll do those later, but you got to mask up. So I'm going to throw that up here at the end of here. Mask me up. I'll throw that up there again at the end after we finish talking about.
We're not going to be able to get on to questions.
We got a few of them right here. We got a couple of them. We got Juan from last week. Juan from Tucson.
Thank you for coming back.
1, 2, 3. Okay, so Juan loves Mexican food. No surprise there, Juan. The more rice and beans, the better. But lately I'm having trouble keeping my weight down, and I've been suffering from some allergies affecting my digestive system, causing bloating, indigestion, and so on. What do you suggest I stop or start doing? Well, I can tell you, Juan, as the husband of a Mexican food blogger, they're actually, the more rice and beans are a side dish. So I'm going to question your portion sizes right now, but I'll defer the rest to Monika.
So yeah, rice and beans, high carbohydrate, and we have to look at quantity, size for sure. But if you're focused mostly on that and you're gaining weight, if you eat something too often on a regular basis, you could start developing some food intolerances or food sensitivities, and your body doesn't really work very well. So I would mix it up. Vitality and variety is really what your diet should be encompassing. You want to have variety. You don't want to have the same thing day in and day out. And so your body's telling you that maybe I should, cut the carbs for a while and add some more protein. So are you having protein with the rice and beans? Maybe you just want to have rice with your protein or the beans with your protein. And I know it's sometimes very difficult to change cultural norms and what you were raised eating. But it sounds like you might want to make some changes that would be less repetitive and start bringing new foods into your diet.
And there might be a portion size issue here too, because I know that a lot of people actually are intolerant to the oligosaccharides, so the sugars that are contained within beans, and consuming large quantities of beans, even amongst those of Mexican heritage, can cause bloating.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I've seen it and smelled it more than once. So
we don't want to go there, but there's another
no.
thing. If you're having beans, a beer with your beans and rice, there's another reason
for
beans
and rice.
That's not a good diet. That's not a good diet. That's not a balanced diet. That's another word that I want to mention. Balanced. So you have vitality and variety, but also balancing your diet. Where are the vegetables? Where again, where's the high protein? Where's your fish? I know beans and rice can constitute somewhat of an amino acid, the essential give
pretty
you
close to complete.
Complete protein, give you all the essential amino acids. But I would mix it up. Just start trying new things.
And don't eat so many tortillas. I can tell you that for a fact.
Yeah, that's another carb.
That'll do it.
You're just carb loading.
A bean burrito every single meal is not going to do you well. I can tell you that right now. So hopefully that helps.
Have you done it?
No, not every meal. Oh. But I can tell you that. It's interesting too, because you can condition yourself to have your body produce the enzymes necessary to digest that sugar in the beans. And if you just gradually increase the quantity of beans, your body will actually respond by producing the right enzymes to digest those oligosaccharides, those sugars in the beans. And you'll develop a greater tolerance for the beans and probably less bloating. But that's a long-term solution.
Yeah, and the opposite. If you have too much of the same thing, you could develop a sensitivity. And it sounds like you've been eating that way for a long time, so maybe that's what's happening.
Yeah, if you have any other information you can give us, you can drop it below this video here. I'm not sure if you're on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook or wherever you are, but just drop us a line. We have contact info at the end, as you could tell from my premature slideology. Yes. So let's go to North Dakota, to Bismarck, the capital of North Dakota. Bismarck is the capital. Yvonne from Bismarck, she reports to us. She states, "I am an outdoors kind of gal. I work hard so I can enjoy my weekends at the lake. I'm liable to stress eat during the week because my job is so taxing. I plan to retire in about 3 years, and I need to make some changes to my bad eating habits now. What can I do?" I didn't know you had bad eating habits. It sounded like you were like the outdoorsy gal doing all kinds of good things.
Mm-hmm. Well, you may be outdoorsy and still eating a lot of food that you shouldn't be eating.
A Big Mac at the top of a mountain.
Yeah, it could. What does outdoorsy mean? Maybe it doesn't necessarily mean athletic. It doesn't necessarily mean active. It just means you like to be in the great outdoors. You could have a cabin and some lake and just love being, near nature. And that's really wonderful, really, really very healthy and healing for you.
It should reduce your stress for sure. So.
Yeah. So maybe the outdoors part is the part that you stay focused when you're outdoors at your lake or whatever on the weekends. But it's those weekdays that are really a killer for you, sounds like. So So yeah, bring the outdoors back into your home environment as much as you can. Try and get some walks in during the day. Be outside in nature as much as possible, because it sounds like that feeds you. That feeds you a lot. If you live near a park or near some natural resource, try and make a point of getting there maybe 3 times a week or twice a week, just to again, feed your soul, because oftentimes we overeat or we eat the wrong things is because we're feeling depleted and we don't feel fed in other ways, emotionally or intellectually, or in any way other than physical. So yeah, I hope that sort of taps into your or gives you some food for thought.
And so Yvonne, thinking about food is one thing, and then what you're eating is another. I would imagine. I mean, if you like fishing, I'm sure you can get some fresh fish at the lake. I'm just not sure as Monika says, what your diet actually is. But it's all those little things that Monika has recommended before, like having fresh fruits and vegetables and other things available for snacking, those types of things. Because if you're really working hard all the time, you want to make sure that you're not reaching for junk during the work week, because that's going to increase the stress and probably take away some of the enjoyment that you have when you're spending your weekends at the lake.
I mean, it's good to choose, fresh fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds as your snack. However, if you're snacking all the time, you're increasing your insulin all day long, and that's not going to help you. It sounds like you did gain some weight, and that's not going to help you hormonally, either, with your insulin, as I said, or your adrenal hormones, specifically cortisol. So that's going to increase some weight too. So you want to make sure that you're not snacking too much, not eating all day long, and not, increasing your insulin levels, because every time you eat, your insulin is shooting up. Not specifically, rapidly.
Not that you're shooting up insulin.
Yeah, it's not like it's shooting up rapidly like a chocolate cake would or something like that. But it's still
chocolate cake.
It still is affecting the insulin levels. Yeah.
I'm marking this broadcast as talking about COVID-19 because Facebook will actually give us greater reach. I'm doing this while we're still live, which is kind of interesting.
Alive?
Well, we're still alive while the broadcast is still alive. It might get a few more visitors today, but most of you, I know,
helps Yvonne in Bismarck.
Yeah, Yvonne Bismarck. It sounds like one of the Kaiser. So.
Yes.
So Tate, I don't know, Tate, are you female or male? I'm so sorry that I don't recognize it from the name. From Charlottesville. I'm assuming it's Charlottesville, Virginia. Beautiful area, if that is the case.
Mm-hmm.
Monticello is one of my favorite places.
Yes. Jefferson.
So
Jefferson is playing.
The Jeffersons, like moving on up to the east side.
Yeah, it reminds me of that song from Hamilton. In Monticello. Did you see? That soundtrack? It's one of my favorite soundtracks.
I do not know the Monticello.
What is it
soundtrack.
that you do in Monticello?
I almost wound up playing the cello instead of the French horn, but that's a whole other story.
Yes.
But never on a mountain, which would be my Monticello. So Tate, sorry, we got distracted there for a moment. Yes. What do you think about intermittent fasting? I've been considering doing it.
Intermittent fasting.
Intermittent
fasting. Yes, it's actually a good thing. Fasting has gotten such a bad rap because a lot of people just don't do it properly. So there is a way to do it, and it is an age-old practice. It's not a new and trendy thing. It is an age-old practice. Most religious sects have some sort of like Lent for the Catholics. Ramadan for Muslim culture, and Yom Kippur for Jewish people. So people who practice the Jewish faith. So there's all sorts of history to fasting. Now, I recommend the best way to fast is 16/8. So basically that means for 8 hours is when you're eating. And then your body's resting for 16 hours. It sort of is similar to what I just mentioned to Yvonne about, insulin. If you're constantly eating, your insulin is going up every time you eat. And that's not going to help you. And in fact, I'm assuming that you're wanting to know this because you want to lose some weight or feel better. So you want to sort of, it's a great idea. I mean, if you were to sort of start eating at 10 a.m. and 8 hours later, what would that be? Like
6 o'clock.
Yeah, that would finish your day, and then you'd have all this rest, and your body would do what it's supposed to be doing during that 16-hour fast. So
yeah, I've done the 7:17, and that's hard for me, but the 8:16 is pretty easy. So
yeah, it's kind of a normal thing. That's kind of how our ancestors ate. You just basically eat when the sun is out, and you don't stop eating when the sun is gone.
And ideally, your largest meal at the top of the day, when your digestive system is most active. So
yeah, definitely. When the sun is at its height is sort of when your digestive system's fire is at its height too. So that's the middle of the day. I just heard something about, what if I have coffee in the morning? So usually they recommend black coffee if you're going to have some coffee, or a teaspoon of heavy cream. That's allowable. That's not really breaking your fast, so to speak.
That sounds very Schwarzbein of you.
Yeah, no, I was listening to Jason Fung, Dr. Jason Fung. He's a nephrologist in Canada, and he's quite an expert on obesity. He's written several books on obesity, the obesity code, and other related types of books. So he was talking about that being acceptable and that not really affecting the blood sugar enough to break the fast.
Yeah, because it's cream. It's not like a half and half where there's more carb.
Yeah. So fats will not increase your insulin as quickly as carbohydrates would. So
that is true.
Yeah. So I would go moderate with the 8 and 16.
Yeah, I think it's just, and it's a case with any other diet program that you're on. It's always good to check with your healthcare professional. If you have a nutritionist or you have a doctor with whom you consult regularly, I think it's good to kind of check in there too, because if you do have some blood sugar issues and things are a little bit more severe. I mean, Tate, I don't know much about your medical history, so we're just going to give you a little bit of information, not try and diagnose you over the internet. It's important to consult with a healthcare professional to make sure that you have some guidance and accountability. And I know Monika does that with people with Coaching for Health.
Yeah, and the idea of the fasting too is that this whole idea that we should be eating all day, just sort of similarly what I said to Yvonne about snacking all day and having these 6 meals a day. That's not. I mean, it was in
vogue at one time.
Yeah, in the 70s and 80s, that was the big grazing.
Yes, you're not a cow.
Yeah, but it's not a good thing to do. And so I don't know where I was going with that thought, but
basically to get your meals in during that 8-hour time period if you do decide to go with intermittent fasting.
A lot of people are doing some extreme things where it's maybe 1 meal a day or 1 meal every 48 hours. I would not recommend that. Definitely if you're not working with a professional, I would definitely not even touch that at this point.
Yeah, and it's better to lose slowly than it is quickly. I can tell you that I've actually been in situations where I actually have advised, but I was carefully watching these people like every other day, as little as 450 calories a day. But those were extreme situations, and they're very dangerous. I mean, even 850 to 1,200 calories a day. It's a safer type of range. And then again, people lose weight on 1,500 calories a day.
Yeah, and this is not about calories. The body really doesn't know anything, doesn't care anything about calories. It cares about hormones, and that's what makes the body function and be a metabolic engine, so to speak. But so you can get calories do not count calories, because that is not the way to the promised land. It's just not part of the equation. The equation is to eat healthy, certainly within that 8 hour period, to eat as healthy as possible. But if you feel like you want to have a little treat, you can have it, because you are still in that 8 hour window. But a piece of chicken is not the same as a piece of chocolate cake. Calorically, they may be the same, but hormonally, totally different. Totally different.
Well, it's their effect upon your hormones, because unless you're looking at the hormones and antibiotics that were injected into the chicken. But I will say that, as you're put to your point, all calories are not created equal. So
no, it's not about calories. It's about, how your body reacts to the food you're putting into it.
It's percentages of fat, percentages of protein, everything else. Like even when going back to Juan and his question about beans and rice and
exactly. Juan, you could try this too, but please contact us before you do.
He's Juan in a million for sure. Actually, we do have time for the last one, so they're going to be short answers though. So Sharon from Albany, I'm assuming it's either Albany, New York or Albany, Georgia. Those are the only two I know. If I only could get 30 pounds off and keep it off, I'd be the happiest person in the world. Why is this so impossible? I guess that's her experience. Here we go. This is what we're just talking about. I count calories, lose weight, and eventually it creeps back up again. Signed, Lost and Sad. This sounds like Dear Abby or something for the weight loss Abby.
I'm so sorry that you're feeling this way, lost and sad, and hopefully we can help you.
Well, she identifies herself as Sharon, though, as opposed to signed Lost and Sad.
Sharon, Lost and Sad. Well, let's make you happy and proud. Let's make you happy and proud and directed and focused. So take the counting calorie stuff off the table. It's sort of the whole Nutrisystem and Weight Watchers mentality is like, I can count points. I'll count points, and it'll be like this equals this. The calories, just exactly what we just talked about. The calories do not equal. They're not the same way. A piece of steak and a piece of chicken or a piece of fudge is not going to metabolize the same way in your body, and it's not going to give your body the information it needs to function optimally. It's not going to do that at all. One is going to rob your body, and one is going to nourish your body. So stay away from calorie counting. You need to eat a certain amount of food throughout the day. And if you're stuck to calorie counting, you will do this yo-yo for a long time. So again, you might consider intermittent fasting. When I first introduced my programs, it's like, stop eating at 6:30. That's what you need to do. Stop eating at 6:30. And it's like, oh my God, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can do this. But the more you do it, the more you can do it. And what happens, the longer a period you go without eating, the less hungry you will be. I mean, Christopher, you've experienced that, where you come on this broadcast and like, oh, I forgot to eat.
I forgot to eat today.
I forgot to eat.
I had my cup of coffee with a little bit of cream in it, and I've been burning fat ever since. So.
Yeah, there you go. It's your freezer. Your fat stores are your freezer. You just open up that freezer and you start chomping on your fat stores.
Chomping on all my fat. I'm eating myself alive. Sweet Jesus.
That's what it's for. It's a storage unit, and your body is you want to burn fat in order to lose weight.
My body is a temple filled with fat.
Well, once you don't have any fat or very little fat, you want to eat more.
If it burns, it burns.
And of course, I'm not promoting any kind of eating disorder here. It's just that you do.
Not
you don't have to eat as much.
Not any specific eating disorder.
No, we want to promote eating order.
Eating order, not
Yes.
disorder.
Yes.
We've actually run short on time. So Patty from Portland and Grant from Boise, we're going to have to answer your questions next time around. I'm going to put up here right now our little bit of contact info. You can reach us at all these wonderful places. You can reach Monika at coachingforhealth.com, me, Dr. V, at drvogelman.com, and you can find Monika at Coaching for Health on the Book of Faces, and me at just plain old Dr. Vogelman almost everywhere, except for YouTube, where I'm Christopher.Vogelman. God knows why.
Plain old
me.
Again, I hope nobody is sad and what was it? Sad and
lost.
Sad and lost.
Don't be sad and lost at any cost. Come back again next week to Total Health Live. And if you have any questions or you have some topics you want us to discuss, or comments and things, please put them down below the video and we will get back to you. Lickety split.
Lickety split.
Not banana.